What's going on, y'all, and welcome back to another Lost Sword video. I have an update to my tier list that I made previously when the game came out, and I want to have a newer one to both talk about the newer characters that have come out. I do have Palamedes here. However, guys, she is brand new, so I'm going to leave that at the very end as kind of just a guess. Remember, it's way too early to put her in a firm spot. At least for now, I want to see more testing, but I have some ideas and thoughts based on what I've seen and, read about her kit. Now, in addition to that, guys, quick disclaimer, of course, all tier lists are subjective. This is not an all-encompassing, definitive guide. Do not get upset if your favorite character, I put them in this avoid the bottom tier row. You could probably complete the game with every single character. All characters are most likely somewhat viable, but I just want this to be a comprehensive list that a newer player could kind of just glance at and have an idea of what are safe investments that are good for 99% of the content. Now, if you want to check out like things like Pride, when they have like 4 different tier lists between like PvE, high scaling, raids, PvP. I want to just talk about these characters as a whole. And if you want to get more nuance with it, you can go and check that out. This is more of just a refer to list, in my opinion, on what is very high efficient characters that are meta, that'll just be safe investments, that'll get you to the end game. And then when you have a lot of resources, you can build anyone and play however the heck you want. So thanks so much for tuning in. Let's jump straight into it. All right, starting from the top, we have the best in all content. And a lot of these characters should be no surprise, y'all, but I'll run through them very briefly. Number 1, we have Galahad. A lot of these characters, guys, we could obviously swap around based on personal preference, but I did kind of try to line them up into more like versatile roles. The more usable in the content across lots of different content, I would probably place them left to right. However, Galahad is just, as we all know, one of the best knights, mitigation-wise, tank-wise, buffing-wise, just fits in almost every composition, fits into almost every area of the game, and yeah, you won't be disappointed no matter what. Tiamat, probably still the premier damage dealer. There's been a lot of characters that are coming for her slot in terms of premier DPS, but I still think she is the queen, the number 1, and she also got an awesome new outfit. Not that that matters for the tier list, but just had to say that. Shout out to the outfit, shout out to the art crew. Next up, guys, Neo Bedevir's up here. And I actually noticed that like some tier lists, I think I'm probably rated a little bit lower in some areas of the game, and I think that's fair. However, I just think as a player, having her on your account is going to be so good. She's so versatile. The buffs, the crowd control, the damage that she applies, the fact that she even works well with most characters in the game, and even buffs some of them. I think units like Palamedes, units like Vivian, can get additional damage via her crowd control is really, really good too. So she just does so much. The amount of stuff she has packed in her kit between utility heals is incredible. Buffs too, right? Belzy is the latest addition, guys, and I actually rated really highly. I don't know if this might kind of tone down as things progress, but I feel like she's just such a great character. Just like the others on this list, she's an insane tank that does very good damage and has an amazing ability to crowd control and also provide additional damage to the rest of your team too. So raids, PvE, PvP, she is almost top slot in a lot of those areas, and she even works not outside of the HP scaling teams, unlike units like Lancelot. Now we have Aaron, guys, and Aaron I think is the best support in the game for that kind of like healer role. And it's kind of strange to say that because, you know, you have the dedicated healers like Rhea, Isolde, Guinevere, Diane, but however, Aaron doesn't do direct healing, but she still provides a lot of tankiness via her buffs, her shields, and then just the way that she gives damage to your squad. The buffs that she provides is a lot more versatile than things like Rhea, who only does it for attack, which means, you know, units like Lancelot, Belzy will not get that benefit. You have to be attack scaling, and the way Aaron's additional damage works makes her really, really good. And I think also for PvP, endgame raids, pushing content, pushing progression with things like the Knight team, things just in general, she can work in any team. Also makes her in this top slot role for the support position. Next up, guys, we have Lancelot, and I rate Lancelot highly just because I think for top tier PvP and top tier in areas like progression, I think she does deserve this role. Unlike the other characters, though, she's not versatile in the fact that she's not really great in high level raids. I still use her in Star Constellation since we need 2 teams, but in general for raids, I never reach for her, as other characters will do more damage in that kind of setting. Next up, guys, we have Diane, who probably should, you know what, we should probably put Lancelot lowest on the tier because of that lack of versatility. But Diane is amazing too, just like Aaron, one of the better healers. She doesn't need to be in a Knight team, but she loves to be in a Knight team, loves to be in those buffing Knight role. And then in general too, though, we can use her outside because the buffs are generic. As well enough to hit other units, not just the HP scaling knights, but just an awesome support character that works well with a lot of the meta units. Speaking of that, we have Lohengrin, who does get buffed by Diane, gets buffed by a lot of characters and just insane damage, probably only second to Tiamat, closely rivaled with Eva, but for the fact that she's also very good in areas like PvP, I think I rate her slightly higher than Eva, who we'll talk about here in just a second. And that wraps up the top tier row that's best in all content, and just put a little asterisk next to Lancelot, as you know, for raids she's not good, but for everywhere else she shines in, I think she does deserve to be up there with the rest. Now we'll go into the very strong tier, and these are all incredible characters too. They're just slightly outshined by the top tier rows. So starting from left to right, we have Eva, who I just talked about. Insane damage dealer. She ramps up, just really good in a lot of areas of the game. Just maybe not so much in like PvP, and sometimes can fall off compared to units like Tiamat, but also can beat Tiamat, can beat Lohengrin under the right conditions. So I do think she should be up there. There could be a very big argument to put her in the top tier, but for now I think she should be just a slight notch below the top tier row. Next up, guys, is Merlin, and Merlin is amazing. Once again, just a little bit slightly lower. She used to be one of the best characters in the game. She still is, but just slightly lower, as there's other units that have kind of fulfilled her role in terms of like either crowd control or buffs, things like Neo Bedivere, I think. But still, if you need like freeze compositions for your Catherines, for your Anessas, sorry, I said that backwards. Anessa, Catherine, she's still good. Crowd control can do good in PvP. Provides nice buffs for your team. Her card is still very good and buff oriented, so still very amazing. Still fits in a lot of roles, just slightly lower. Ran, I think, is a big up and comer. She's kind of been all over the place since the start of the game, but I think lately there's a lot of reasons to play her, between the shock comps, between just having buffs for your team. She works well in raids, works well in PvE content. I think she's a very strong unit right now, and she's currently on the banner, so consider picking her up. Her pet is also very strong too, but this is not a pet tier list. Next up, guys, is Lua, and honestly, I think Lua could go lower on the tier list here compared to some of the other characters, but I almost think it's not too important. I just had her next to Rand because they're in the shock comp. Lua used to also be one of those very strong damage dealers, but the more like characters that come out, they've also really been competing for a role and slightly pushing her down a bit. Still amazing on like the Kraken raid. Anytime you have water element enemies, she is amazing, and then the shock comp, obviously she does really well there too. Now Vivian is an amazing PvE and like raid damage dealer. If you just give her any types of buffs, or sorry, debuffs in the form of like more vines, the roots, things like Neo Bedivere, Tristan Pet, she's gonna pop off, and I think she does deserve a spot here just for the raid damage alone. Isolde is very nice. Just unfortunately, things like Deanne and Aaron often leave her without a spot. You know, Deanne, Aaron, and Neo Bedivere, the triple support combo there. A lot of times you could put Isolde though if you need that extra bit of healing, as she's the highest output healer in the game. And also, right, the burst healing on demand, a lot of these other characters cannot do that, especially. They don't have that big burst heal. So if you ever find yourself needing that, the fact that she also has damage reduction, really nice to run her with units like the Lancelot progression teams for when you're just taking so much damage, you just need to survive. Then I think Isolde is your girl. Rhea is just incredible if you just need those right sets of buffs. So if you have like an attack scaling comp, I use her a lot in Constellation and like a second team where you just need buffs that hit the right types of units. Remember, this only works, the attack portion, only, you know, certain characters scale off attack. Now that we have a lot more HP scaling units and things like that. So be careful a little bit with her, but still very strong support unit that has incredible damage buffs. Guinevere is one that's just good for healing, good for like progression, good for PvP, but not standout in terms of like buffs or like just generic use. You do need to find a spot for her when you're like either needing a revive with like PvE stages that have big burst. PvP, I think she's still pretty dang good because of that revive mechanic, but a lot of the other healers bring something necessary to the game, and until we need more revive, I think she should be a little bit below the rest of the sport cast. Anessa, I think, is a very strong damage dealer in certain areas of the game. Obviously, when her element works properly, and then if you can bring her any type of like crowd control, ice support, she does very well under those conditions. Still very competitive in the raid department. Isabel is, I don't know, I think Isabel might be ranking down for me slowly, but I still think she's incredible in terms of the buffs, in terms of the like damage mitigation that she can bring to the team. Her damage is okay too. It's just she's kind of, you know, I think as more characters get introduced, she's slowly losing that spot unless you really need those niche utility between like the invincibility and the damage mitigation. However, the crit resistance debuffs that she provides and the decent damage, I still think she should be above here, above a lot of the rest of the cast, as she's still a fair bit stronger than most of these other units, especially in the bottom row. All right, so we already covered Lua. Let's go on and move to the next tier. Next up is the pretty good tier, and this is still very good, guys. All things considered, this is still very good in the game. I think as long as you're not in this bottom tier, you're still extremely viable. And once again, don't get upset if your favorite characters here at the bottom. That doesn't mean they're bad. They're just well, they're bad in comparison to the rest of the cast, and you should only invest into them until way later, or if they're your only option. That's just my opinion, though. So starting from the top, guys, we have Lisa. Very strong damage dealer. I kind of say this a lot for a lot of the cast, but you know, she was a premier top damage dealer, but she has been pushed out slowly. And I think her main claim to fame right now is you can actually still crit the raid boss Tiamat. But other than that, like unless you have mob areas in PvE where you're struggling, those massive amounts of like slime, where there's just too many mobs to clear in time, I think those are really her only specialties, as there's other damage dealers that now do more damage than her. Claire is an interesting one that I think could be moved around in the tier list, either up or down, but she used to be very, very important for like surviving certain enemies, certain bosses that do too much burst. For PvP, right, she used to be very helpful there. She does a stun, but I do think as well with maybe the meta shifting a bit and with the way progression is happening in PvE with a new addition of characters, she's also been slowly losing her real impact. But however, if you still have her and you don't have other options, I still think she's incredible for that role where, you know, she takes fatal damage and either stuns. You can do some cool combos in terms of like cards. But yeah, I think be careful with investing fully into her. Honestly, she works really good on low investment anyways, so she's more of a niche role, but sometimes she has high impact, just not as needed as before. Christine is another one that, you know, has on paper incredible damage, good dots, team buffs, card. Her card is very good too. But in general, there's just better options in the game right now for overall use. If you have her though, and you have her heavily invested, the fact that she's in this pretty good tier means she will still do very competitive numbers, just slightly lower than the top 2 tiers. Catherine is one that I think she got a lot of buffs before, but it still wasn't quite enough. She's still kind of niche. She wants to be in that ice position role, and she still, you know, wants to synergize with the other freezing type units. But if you do, you know, invest fully into her and bring all those head supports, her damage, just like Christina, can be competitive. Tristan, same exact thing. She's more of an enabler, and unless you're playing things like that Vivian comp, maybe the new Palamedes, you just don't really need her typically, as there's other ways to get crowd control that do better overall, but still important to have if you play root teams. Now, Kay is another one that's fallen off like a ton of bricks, and it's a shame to say because she used to be my favorite character in the game. She used to be a strong like frontline tank that does damage too. She used to be good in PvP because of the immortality, but I just think that the meta once again has been shifting away from her, and I would be a little more careful on investing fully into her. She's still pretty good compared to the rest of the characters here, but overall I do think she's losing her identity. Last but not least, guys, we have Percival, and I think Percival is like the best budget tank. Could also be very good in PvP, but if you have Galahad, you have things like Cal Queen, you just use those better knights that are better at soaking up damage. Or Percival's very good at soaking up damage, but she doesn't bring a lot outside of that. Soaking up damage and providing a little bit of defensive buffs. Other characters will bring like offensive buffs and just tank just as well, if not better too. All right, guys, last but not least, we have this tier. I just put these here for the very strong cards. You have things like what do you call it, the Cersei card, which is incredibly important, the Lilith card that gives the crit, and then you have Enya card, which is just very good for rangers that you want to buff, things like Neo Bedivere. I think just Enya card is also very good in general for raid damage, but this doesn't have to be in the very strong card position. Enya, maybe I would probably put her in the bottom tier, but she's honestly not. I think just for sake of ease, we'd probably put her in the bottom tier, but just take note of her card. I found that that's one of the better ranger cards when you just need some extra damage buffs for your team. And last but not least, guys, we have the bottom tier row, and I do want to talk about Summer Mary real quick. She is still one of the better DPS, if maybe best in slot DPS for like one specific raid. But in my opinion, having to invest fully for one raid is a little bit too niche for new players to invest into. Instead, you can build her up later if you want. Moving right along, guys, we have Joan of Arc, who should fit well in with the Knight comps. However, I still think the other supports I listed at the top tier, things like Aaron, Deanne, Neo Bedivere, are just still overall better supports for your team. She just doesn't seem like she does enough, even now that she has those the buffs that she got not too long ago that make her like HP scaling. It's still not great in my opinion. Morgana, you have Gawain, Lucy. All these characters at the bottom tier, guys, have their specific roles. They do have areas of the game that they excel in, but unfortunately they are overshadowed at the moment, at least until they get more buffs. All these characters, once again, could be perfectly viable. I just don't think they're safe investments at the start of the game when your resources are so lacking, and instead you could be pushing towards the end. Now, guys, last but not least, let's talk real quick about Palamedes real fast. If I were to place her, I think she's going to go somewhere probably in the second to highest tier. I don't want to put her anywhere just yet because it's still very new, like I said before. But the fact is she can do some incredible damage. I think she's going to go next to units like Eva, where, you know, there's still characters like maybe Tiamat, maybe even Lohengrin that could do just as much damage as her, but don't have those specific requirements where, you know, she really wants to bring a crowd controller, or if the boss is immune, you could see Palamedes suffering. However, in ideal conditions, I've already seen her doing more damage than Tiamat, in, like I said, certain scenarios. So keep an eye on her. I think she could be very strong and near the higher portion of the tier list. But with that being said, guys, we'll wrap things up there. Thank you so much for tuning in. Stop by any of my live streams. If I'm playing another game, you can ask me Lost Sword questions. Hit me up on Discord. And as always, thank you for watching. I'll catch you all later. Peace out, everybody.